Welcome, welcome, guys. We are back for another episode of The Lock-In. I'm David Lappin, and I'm here, of course, with three-time best-selling author and cap model, Dara O'Kearney.
Delighted to be here, David. New sponsor, who this? Yeah, no, you might also notice I have a new
new patch. You're like a
patch.
Formula One driver.
Yeah, now there's lots of space on the rest of the shirt. So, like, I mean, we can go with a wider lens. We can even put stuff in the back. I just putting that out there. Yeah, no, obviously, Cardschat. It was actually our guest on this week's show, Barry, who kind of set this up years ago when the first book came out. He approached them to have me do a thread on the book on their forum, and I think most people who are asked to do that, they kind of do it for a while and then they politely leave. But I never really got to that part. I just kind of hung around like a bad dog who had found his new home. It's a really nice environment they've created there. Like, I have a lot of experience down the years with online forums, and they pretty much all end the same way. A group of very bitter people talking about how shit the world is. And you kind of have to, you really have to take specific steps to avoid that. Like, obviously, I was around way back in the old times when the internet started, and these forums actually started to pop up. And there were a number of studies done on sort of how these things go. There were three phases that sociologists refer to as storming, norming, and forming. Storming was the idea that some new people arrive and they kind of like don't fit into the culture of the place, and they just create havoc for a while. And then after a while, they're normed. In other words, they kind of accept the norms of the place. Maybe there's a bit of to and fro, and they come to an agreement with the existing regulars of new norms. And then the new group forms, basically. But you constantly need new people coming, because if new people if you don't have this storming phase, the thing stagnates and they sort of drift away from reality and the rest of the world into this sort of bitter universe where everything else is shit. Cardschat's the opposite of that. They have done everything they can to sort of stop it from becoming a toxic environment. I was actually looking, by contrast, at an old poker forum I used to spend a lot of time on, and I just couldn't recognize it. Like, nobody was talking about poker. They were all incredibly bitter. There were some very bizarre attitudes being expressed, like, "Oh, it's fine to scam people." Like, I mean, when people give you money, sure, they know there's a risk that they're not getting it back. So it was the kind of place where not only would I not go, but I don't think any person who wasn't there already would even consider joining. That, unfortunately, is the way most groups go.
Very interesting. Well, I hope I get some sort of kickback for that. What is now a 5-minute ad, I assume, at the beginning of this show. And we haven't even brought on our special guest. Joining us this week is 5-time best-selling author. Sorry, Dara, I introduced you as 3-time, but he's 5-time best-selling author, Barry Carter. Barry, welcome to the show.
I should probably get a kickback from Dara as well, because as he mentioned at the start, I introduced him to the forum with the plugin. But no, Cardschat's very nice.
I don't see any patches on you, Barry. I just see a beautiful new book cover.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, and I was even lucky just to have it nearby at the time. So there you go, done that. You can ask me anything you want.
This show is just shill to the max these days. I'm expecting Dara to be sponsored by Lucozade next week. I don't know what guest we're gonna. I suppose we should just bring on Helmut and have a brain fuel sponsor.
Yeah, we should go for that. That's the do a show sort of doped up on that. All three of us. That would be good.
Can I just point out there, Dara, that if you want to go past Barry, because I know you're a very competitive person, and become 5, 6, 7-time best-selling author while he doesn't, you're going to have to collaborate with someone else. I'm just suggesting, maybe, I don't know, do you want to write a book? Do you want to scoop by him?
Yeah. I think Ian Simpson wants to write a book on cats or something. So who knows?
You're going to get your name put on that one as well. Okay, having shilled God knows what the fuck there for the last half an hour. No, in fairness, Cardschats are good lads. Our actual sponsor, Unibet Poker, better get a little look in here. On the last show, we mentioned how the Unibet Online series had come and gone, but we neglected to mention what I think is a very cool little stat. Dara, you have a very unique, I'm guessing, maybe there's someone else out there with it, but a very unique achievement that you unlocked and continue to unlock in the UOS.
Yeah, every single UOS series that I've played, I've won at least one event. I think I won 2 events the last series. And it's obviously just a statistical anomaly because there actually have been some series that really haven't gone that well, and I've been 27th on the leaderboard, but still managed to at least win one tournament, which I don't know if it's all that remarkable given I play 50, 60, whatever number of events, but still, yeah, it's the kind of thing, like the way my mind works, I notice all these streaks and I like to keep them going. So every time the US comes around, it does pop into my mind, oh, I really want to win an event just to keep that streak going.
Excellent. And it keeps the sponsors very happy as well when you do that. Barry Carter, I have to mention this. You took Dara the US this time as well. Yeah.
It's the only series I take seriously. I've been playing them pretty much since the pandemic started, really, every sort of 2 or 3 months. And I was quite pleased for the old brag equity, as we call it. I did realise, just as Dara was talking, that I missed a massive opportunity to claim that I'd won every single series, because you can change your name on Unibet. So I could have said, yeah, I was Winky Biscuit 674 in March, and I was Big Hot Dong or something in the summer one and stuff. So I should have done that, but no, I was chuffed to win that one. And I had a question as well. I've got a trophy avatar now at Unibet. Yeah. I'm very, very pleased with that. That's my own.
That's what we call an NFT.
An NFT, right? And I was thinking, like, is it plus EV to use that avatar when I'm playing poker, or does that make me look like a sort of a noob and it's the only thing I've got to show for myself?
Well, I think you won the low leaderboard tournament, so I think you can display that one all you like.
Yeah.
I wonder about that. Like, I do see people with those trophy avatars, and I guess I do play a little bit differently against them as a result. Just assume they're not fish. I mean, obviously, I'd still play against Barry as a fish, but yeah, just on the subject of claiming to have won previous tournaments. I mean, I saw Barry claim on Twitter that he defeated Ludo Gaelic heads up in the latest UK UPT. Now, I watched that whole heads up, and Barry's disguise for that day was very, very good. He was a lot different from what he normally looks like.
Well, the thing, I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of anonymous Hendon mob flags. Just
are you just in there stealing all the German results?
Yeah. I could be Andy Hills with all the flags if Hendon mob just let me in on the database.
Andreas Hills.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, well, look, this does segue nicely. Of course, you not only made a final table, but you won those final tables. And I'm sure, somewhere in there was maybe coaching material that you were working on that was in the back of your mind at the time that was maybe keeping you fresh and keeping you, shall we say, ICM aware in the end game. Is that enough of the SEO terms there, Barry, to lead you in?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, they obviously didn't contribute to the win, because everyone knows that ICM is it just helps you get min cashes, and it doesn't help you win the whole tournament in the first place. So they were complete anomalies. But yes, I had a good end game poker strategy in that tournament because of the ICM book.
Well, it's not all been plain sailing for you guys. This book has come out. I think you've sold 4 million copies already. It's an incredible effort. 400 copies already. Fair play. It's only been out 3 days though, so that's pretty good going. But what I do have to say is you have been hampered. You've actually been hampered somewhat by fucking Bezos and Brexit and all these kind of things that I assume you want to get off your chest now. I don't know which of you wants to have a go at this.
I'll let Dara go first, because I think he still kind of blames me for Brexit, even though I voted the other way.
Yeah, I'm perfectly aware, even from the time from talking to Barry, that he voted against Brexit. But I need somebody to blame. And in my mind, all these bees like Brexit, Bezos, Boris, Barry, they're all the same. Like they're just trying to ruin things for the rest of us. I mean, basically the situation is because of Brexit and the general difficulties of getting stuff from the UK anymore. Specifically Irish people who would have always ordered their paperbacks, etc., on Amazon.co.uk aren't able to get it at the moment. Now, at the time of recording, they actually can get it, but what seems to have happened is some other company in the UK has bought some copies, and they're now offering to sell them to Irish people for the exorbitant price of €38. So please don't do that. Please don't buy those.
Wow.
Well, I haven't seen that. Oh, no.
Yeah. Can't believe my company's been named and shamed already. That's terrible.
Yeah, so we are going to have a pile of books at the IPO. We're going to have a signing, so that's one option for Irish customers. Another one is just go to Amazon.France. I think you have to pay a little bit more postage coming from France, but it'll still be cheaper than the gouging rate of Barry's backshed startup, where he's obviously selling these books from.
Well, I am obviously keen to segue to the IPO book launch, because I think that's going to be wonderful. It'll also get those picketers off your lawn, Dara. I know all the Irish poker crew have been just forming, sort of a queue outside your house. Can't even go for your weekly run anymore now without them, hassling you. It's terrible. But the IPO will be the venue for a proper book launch. You had a proper book launch for the satellite book, and that was in Malta. It was a great event. I remember Kasia Scanlon helping us run that one. You, of course, didn't get to have a book launch for PKO because there was a fucking pandemic and that ruined everything. And so you are getting to have one for this one, which I think is great. Are you looking forward to it, Barry?
Very much so. I've not been anywhere for 2 years, basically. And Dara and I have never been in the same vicinity when we've launched a book for whatever reasons. And the IPO is a tournament I've been to a bunch of times over the years. So I was quite, and it's also probably the ideal target market for the book. It's not too high stakes, but it's a big prize. The ICM means something in those tournaments. So I am delighted to be getting out of the house. Absolutely.
Excellent stuff. Dara, lots of feedback, all positive that I've seen for the book so far. Not surprisingly, it's a brilliant book. And to be honest, particularly in the post-flop ICM section, I think you've really broken some ground. Any unexpected feedback, though?
Yeah, probably the most unexpected feedback was the day the book launched. As I was preparing to go to bed, I got some messages from Mason Malmuth, who, of course, is the inventor of ICM, let's say. And he had already read the book in its entirety, and we proceeded to have a very long, detailed discussion about some finer points. He sent me a math paper recently written by a professor, and he said that the professor in question had also bought the book. It was really eye-opening to me that someone like Mason, even at this stage of his journey, was
be very careful. I didn't know where that was going.
was that engaged and still interested to see what was being. What
a lot of people say that about you, Dara.
So, true, yeah. I mean, it's just two old guys having a chat about the old days. But yeah, no, that was really eye-opening. We're hoping to have Mason on a show on the chip race, in the not too distant future, to talk about that and some other stuff he's been up to. That was certainly the most unexpected feedback. The other most unexpected thing was, you mentioned the previous book launch in Malta, and the most unexpected thing for me that day was that about 90% of the people who turned up were Finnish. And Finns apparently only have about 4 names: Tommy, Mika, whatever the other ones are, but they have like 7 different spelling variations of each name. So it was quite a confusing thing for me. But I thought, well, this at the IPO it'll obviously be different. But I have actually been contacted by a Finnish TV crew who are going to be shooting at the IPO, so there might actually be more Finns than I expect there.
Great stuff. Well, great to see people are going to be traveling for this. I did think it would be a mostly Irish affair, but obviously we have Barry coming over from the UK. I'd say there might be some English and Scots over, and maybe some Finns too. That'd be great fun.
The IPO gets lots of French players every year, doesn't it?
It used to. That was more back in the days when there was no live poker in France. There was a period where live poker really wasn't a thing in France, and the French just started coming en masse, not just to the IPO, but to the Six Max. In fact, the Six Max was so popular among the French that it eventually became a Winamax.
Winamax, yeah.
And these scores of them used to come for the European Deep Stack as well. So there was a fine tradition of just the French arriving en masse and almost taking over a tournament. I think if it's less of a factor these days because they obviously have live poker, but you still do get a decent number of French, Belgians in particular. For some reason, we had a lot of Belgians at the last one.
Well, we're counting down 10 days now until the IPO begins. It's pretty much going to start the second that live poker is allowed back in Ireland. We could literally not missing split second. We're like right in there in the Bonington the moment it happens. I do know for a fact this is going to be a sellout I think hotel rooms are already largely booked up, so you're going to have to, scout around. Maybe there's good hotels around O'Connell Street. You've got some options, maybe Airbnbs and whatnot if you are coming over. But I would recommend anybody thinking about this one 10 days out now, make some plans. Don't think you can just kind of show up on the day and it'll be smooth sailing. You want to do a little bit of pre-planning, I think. There is word that they're going to build some kind of construction in the car park, perhaps, to add more tables. They literally feel like there's going to be that big a turnout that they might need a marquee. Maybe an extra 10 to 14 tables out there is being looked at. Nick O'Hara has added a 1K event to the schedule, which is really exciting. That's actually going to receive some of the feature table coverage, which I know will be sponsored by Lux on Pay. Unibet are obviously the sponsor of the festival itself, but Lux on Pay have decided to put their name on that particular tournament, which is great. And I think it's going to be fantastic. Tower's going to be over doing some commentary. Dara, I know you and I will be in the box a fair bit. Barry, we're going to drag you into the commentary box for I don't know, at least once a day for an hour. I hope. I hope you're up
absolutely.
for that.
Be a nice treat to Yorkshiremen in the commentary box if me and Tower get.
Oh no, not at the same time. No, we couldn't have that. No one will tune in if we have to. We have to split you up. But it'll still be great to have you. But no, Tower's a great lad, and he has obviously done the live stream coverage for, I want to say, at least the last 2, maybe even the last 3 IPOs. And it's been a really, really big thrill to do it with him. He's a bit of a legend of Midlands. And where is Blackpool? Where is Blackpool?
That's in the north. That's really
legend of the north in England.
I think anywhere off the main motorway that goes through the UK, those are the kind of areas that he hits. I mean, he's brilliant at, like, he's just such a workhorse. Like, he can do 12, 14 hours, no bother. He's pretty amazing on that stuff. I would say on the 1K as well. I mean, Barry doesn't know this, but he was instrumental to us getting that off the ground. The problem with 1Ks is you're always worried about, is there going to be any value? And we told him, well, there's this English fish who's traveling, and he recently won a Unibet online series event, and he's got lots of book money with him. So
Very predictable. Yeah.
Well, look, on the IPO, there are, I think, at least 4 day ones. There might even be a sneaky 5th day one. So there's loads of chances to get in. There's going to be an online day one this weekend. Is that right, Dara? This weekend?
Yeah, this weekend. Yeah. So actually, when you said 10 days, technically it's actually starting in
2 days from when this comes out. No, tomorrow. That's it. Tomorrow you can play.
Or it might be next weekend, because both of us are so incredibly unprofessional. We have
no idea. Sorry, Nick. You'll have to come on the show if you want us to get the plugs right. Anyway, I wanted to, obviously, the big stuff going on at the moment in the world of poker is the World Series. It's been going 8 days. As per the time of broadcast. And Barry, you wrote an article just ahead of that with a number of predictions. You've also filled out a bingo card. I don't know how the bingo card's going, but it was a more humorous bingo card. I think you had 25 slots in that one, and a few of them already came in. But you did write an article for Poker Strategy that had 5 predictions. The first one, I'm gonna cover. I'm gonna be nice. You said it was going to be a good series for Daniel Negreanu. Why did you think that?
Yes. Partially to tilt you two, obviously. I hate making predictions about which players will do well, because you are essentially just making a prediction about who's going to run well in the series, because there's too many good players for one of them to shine over the rest. But I've just had this thing in my head that his loss to Doug Polk, I personally think, is going to prove to be a really good investment for him, albeit a 1.2 million one, because he's I think he's just been forced to up his game massively, and he's won 2 tournaments since then. He
did, and I think there was 11 people in one of those, and there was maybe 17 people in the other one. No,
yeah. So, that was my prediction. So it's been a week. He hasn't done anything yet.
He hasn't cashed yet. You put the mockers on him, Carter.
Yeah. Well, it's a long old series. Helmuth seems to be doing well. I should have picked him out instead.
Well, exactly. Phil Helmuth, 3 cashes already, 2 final tables. He actually went very deep in the 08 event that just finished. He came 5th. We'll be talking a bit about that one in a few moments' time. But before we move on to that, your second prediction was dealer issues. Can you be a bit more specific?
Yeah, well, it's been rumoured for quite some time, and in recent weeks it's been kind of clearly showing the case that there are dealer shortages in Vegas, just like there are skill shortages worldwide because of pandemic-related issues. A couple of the sister casinos to the Rio have had to close the poker rooms so they can move all the dealers from there into them. We've already seen one of the daily deep stack tournaments this week cancelled because there weren't enough dealers. And
Geraldo was inconsolable. Neil Farrell, friend of the show, inconsolable. I think it was on his birthday as well. He was planning a nice long session and a Rio deep stack that day.
And the World Series, the World Series took the controversial decision to not require vaccines on the dealers, the same that they've required vaccines on all the players in the series this year, which obviously points to there not being enough dealers to make it possible for a completely vaccinated series. So for that reason, my prediction is basically that I just think there's going to be an issue. It could be they're not very good this time around because there's less of a pool to pick from. It could be that a bunch of dealers might get sick, which seems very likely. I've heard some people complaining about dealers so far this series, but people always do. So I'm not claiming that as me being right yet. But I just think it's just inevitable. This is not denigrating the World Series in the slightest. I think this would be inevitable in any series under the conditions that they're in. I just think it's one of those things that's inevitable this year, unfortunately.
Well, you sort of touched on it there, but COVID is playing a part, and it's actually part of your third prediction. Dara, I want to bring you in on this stuff. Barry thinks it's going to be a COVID-related scandal.
It seems reasonable, yeah. I mean, before we move on to the leaders thing, I have heard some scare stories coming back too, but we do get that at every WSOP. Like the standard of dealers at WSOP is just never very good because all the best dealers in Vegas are working in other casinos, so they have to get everybody in. And I think the issues this year are more likely to be around shortages, not that the standard is just going to be lower. But yeah, I've heard scare stories like dealers saying stuff at the table that they really shouldn't in the middle of a hand, which could influence action and so on. So that's obviously an issue. On the COVID thing, everybody is saying to me more or less the same thing. Literally the only thing they're doing is making sure that all the players are vaccinated. There are no other precautions really in place. And I've talked to a few players on this, and like they're actually quite concerned about it as well. There is a feeling that this is sort of just a massive giant petri dish they're creating out there in the desert at the moment. I was speaking to Jennifer Tilley a few nights ago, and she said she's actually decided not to go to the World Series this year because of her concerns over that area. So yeah, I think definitely something's going to come. Now the thing is with the gestation periods, maybe we won't know until after the series and suddenly lots of people get sick. That's a possibility. But yeah, I think that's a reasonably safe prediction. People are crowded in at tables, like they haven't even reduced the numbers. I've heard reports of 10-handed tables.
10-handed tables. Lots of people are talking about that. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, it is pretty grim.
Well, you mentioned there Gentili not going, and obviously, we're very unlikely to go, although I know you're sort of keeping the door ajar at the moment, Dara. But, with a lot of Europeans not traveling, I'm sure a lot of conscientious Americans deciding it's a year to miss, I guess, even though that's disappointing to do so. It does point to what is your fourth prediction, Barry, which is less runners for the than there was in the 2019 main event, which was obviously a very big one. It was sort of getting back towards not quite Jamie Gold numbers, but that sort of area. And a lot of people were predicting maybe it would go over the top of that this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you had a bet at the start of this year on the number of runners in the main event, whatever side of the bet you took, you have had a roller coaster ride that you rarely see in gambling. I mean, there's been so many things that point to the series being massive this year, and there's been so many things that point to the series being tiny by comparison. There was some record numbers coming out of the World Poker Tour events. We were getting lots of good news about vaccines and things like that. And then just at the last sort of minute, we've had vaccine requirements and stuff like that. I set the line at 7,000, and I said I'd take the under this time around on the main event. And so far, we've had some pretty big numbers for the smaller buy-in tournaments. The the reunion got something like 12,000, almost 13,000 runners, which is pretty spectacular. I think there was about 8,000 uniques. But the high roller events seem to be pretty small by comparison. We've had a couple of events under 100. The 25k event was 139 players, I think. The World Series main event is always a special event that defies any kind of normal logic in that respect. But I'm still going to say under 7,000 this year for the main event.
I think that trend that you're talking about the the smaller runner fields getting incredible numbers, that literally started after Black Friday, as far as I can remember. Everybody was curious that year what would happen, and kind of the WSOP put out a statement saying actually the numbers were up, but that kind of belied the fact that what was actually happening was they were putting on these it was when they started putting on lower buy-in events. When I started going to the World Series, they thought that any event would be under 1k was just unthinkable. And now most, like a very high proportion of the events are. So what's been happening in recent years is the numbers of those things have just been getting bigger and bigger. But the WSOP main event has also been holding its own, or even getting bigger. It's the stuff in the middle that's getting squeezed. The traditional 1Ks, 1500s, 2.5Ks, 5Ks, and the high roller events, as you mentioned. So I'm not sure how much effect the pandemic has had on that. I think we might have seen that anyway. I think we would have seen incredible numbers if there had been no issue around vaccinations and all that stuff. There was such a pent up demand. Everybody was just sort of, and even like recreational players in Europe were very, very excited. Guys who talked about going out there at some stage, it was on their bucket list, and they kind of decided, well, this is the year I'm going to do it, because last year made them kind of realize you can't just keep kicking that down the road. You can't take for granted that it will always be there. Now, all of those players have had to cancel. There will still be Europeans traveling across, assuming the travel restrictions are lifted, which will boost the numbers at the last minute. I know Jack Hardcastle has booked a flight for the 5th. He's basically gambling that the restrictions will be lifted by then. When you have as much money as Jack, you can obviously gamble on those sort of outcomes. But I think there will be others as well who are just sort of taking the view, if I can get to the main event by any means, I'll be there. So I think it could be a kind of a strange series in that suddenly in November we'll have a fairly big new wave of Europeans traveling across.
Very good. Well, the 5th prediction on Barry's list was really boring, to be honest. It was a fondly remembered series, which is not the brand of this show. We don't like talking about nice things. Just go straight into the controversy. Or go on, do you want to say something about a fondly remembered series, Barry? I don't know what to do with that.
To be perfectly honest, it was mostly because I've spent the last sort of 4 or 5 months on Twitter just doing jokes, shitting on the World Series because of all the back and forth with the vaccine rules. And I just didn't want the World Series to think that I was sort of being antagonistic towards them. I just think it's an impossible situation that they're in. And other than maybe the deal of vaccine non-requirements, I don't know what I would have done differently in their position. But I do think people will look back at this series fondly, because everyone kind of appreciates that it's going to be imperfect. Everyone's going to have to make sacrifices, and I think people might say, "Oh yeah, it was quite nice going back. It was, it wasn't too bad wearing the masks and stuff like that." So yeah, it was very vague. It was, I just wanted to be nice. I just wanted to end on a more positive note after doing my bingo card.
I'm trying to imagine the situation where Caesars or the Rio or WSOP are sitting around a round table going, what are we going to do about this Barry Carter guy who keeps shitting on us on Twitter?
No, you'd be wrong.
And then they went, oh no, hang on. Oh no, his 5th prediction was nice, so he's grand again. We're fine.
You'd be wrong. I have upset somebody at the World Series who said to me, this is years ago, I shall be watching what you write very closely.
Oh wow! Like in an 86 kind of 8 miles, 6 feet.
Yeah.
So
I'm very mindful of that. So.
Let's make some news. Who threatened your life, Barry Carter?
No, he didn't threaten my life. He just said he's going to keep an eye on my career. It's gone okay, so obviously he was looking out for me.
Oh, please tell us who this is. Come on, we can actually elevate this show to a viral sensation if you can.
No, I've seen what happens when you put out your viral clips and it's
Let's not go back there. Let's move swiftly on. We'll move swiftly on from there. What's actually happening at the WSOP right now is Ari Engel has taken down event 9, the 10K 08 Omaha event. He outlasted a relatively small field. So kind of what you said is holding up here. 134 runners, including Phil Helmut, who made the final table and ultimately came fifth. Mentioned that a moment ago. Helmut got 80 grand for his trouble. Ari got 317k for his trouble, and he also got his second gold bracelet. Ari had famously ran shite in World Series past, and then 2019 picked up a bracelet in the 2.5k, and now he's obviously put one on the other wrist this time round. We're delighted for him, one of our favorite people in poker. Always root for Ari, so delighted to see that one. Probably the biggest news of today, as it is from our point of view, was yesterday from the World Series point of view with the time difference, and it's actually the day before yesterday from your point of view watching this. Hope that's all clear now. Is Jason Koon won event number 11, the 25k Heads Up Championship event. That's a really big one. I think it was 57 runners, maybe. I hope I got that right. Ultimately boiled down to 8 of the lads cashing. The round of 8 was the cashers. And no pal of mine, Benjamin Reason, I was delighted to see came 7th. He picked up a nice little 36k for his trouble, as a guy I knew from a forum years ago. Hadn't seen much of him on the poker scene for the last while and spotted his name there. Also falling in that round was Mikita Bajikowski from Belarus. Big name player these days, one of the best in the world. And then making the sort of semi-final stage were Daniel Zak and Henry Puustinen. Now, Henry Puustinen, Dara, Henry being one of those Finnish names, of course, that is just one of the 4 that everyone has.
Yeah, 2 N's, 2 I's, 3 R's, something like that.
2 U's in this case, this time. But Henry is better known online as Clicker or Button Clicker, and people who sort of follow poker closely will know that he was one of the coaches of Douglas K. Polk for the Polk DNEGS Challenge. He was obviously coached by Frab and Clicker. Clicker's the 21-year-old sort of sensation, phenom. I think Frab is a little bit older, but everyone was sort of saying when this Puustinen guy turns 21, watch out for him. Well, he turned 21 a few months ago, straight out there, straight into 3rd spot in the Heads Up 25k. I suppose a bit of a specialty of his. Ultimately, then it was Gabor Jabal from Hungary and Jason Koon in the final. Jason managed to win that in the wee hours of this morning and take down, a bracelet, 250 grand. He gets that monkey off his back. He's no longer getting called the best player who hasn't got a bracelet. I guess we have to hand that over to Stevie Chidwick or someone like that, do we?
Stevie has none, yeah. I mean, if Stevie doesn't have one, it's definitely Stevie.
Barry Carter, who's the best player who doesn't have a bracelet as of today?
Dara.
There we go. That was the right answer. Barry wants to write a 4th book with Dara. Moving on, I suppose, and it's a handy enough segue, is Jason Koon has moved to GG, sort of like well done GG for picking an ambassador, and he immediately gives you some headlines a couple of days later. That was fortuitous timing. We obviously have a good pal in there in John Scanlon, who sort of is in the mix with choosing ambassadors and lining up ambassador things and whatnot. So I'm sure John is sitting pretty today thinking he made a very good acquisition. In joining the GG crew, Koon's role includes some special duties beyond simply representing the brand. He spoke about this kind of at his press release, whatever you want to call it. He did with Daniel Grant a few days ago. He said some of his work will focus on strengthening the poker room security and game integrity efforts. Koon will also serve as an advocate for the high roller, VIP, and high volume players. This was sort of interesting to me because obviously we've had the RTA scandal involving Cruz. We've been talking about that stuff. That's probably like nearly 9 months ago now, but it's still there in the background. Jason said something along the lines of, I'd be very familiar with what GTO lines look like. So in terms of recognizing when someone might be using RTA, I think I'm a good candidate. I'm a good person to have there in the team. But it made me feel kind of weird about it there, because what Jason was basically implying was, I'm going to be in there in the back room, sort of helping them figure out who's cheating. Well, like if you're sponsored by the site, are you allowed be in the back room looking at the stuff back there? Like we're not allowed to do that at Unibet. So I thought that was already a kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have interpreted that as he's in the background going like, that lad's cheating, get him off the site. I think I thought it was more along the lines of like advising them on how to spot it.
Okay.
Which is, but again, this is an interesting area, because you remember, David, at one of our meetings in Unibet, we were quite interested to know how Unibet goes about this, because Unibet obviously takes it very seriously as well. And their security is so good that they wouldn't even tell us, which, I mean, I don't blame, given that one of the two of us is known widely as Leaky Lappin. But their sort of attitude was, well, like, if people know what we're doing to catch cheats, then they can sort of get around it. Now, Jason in his interview seemed to be implying they're going sort of the chess route of if you're playing too perfectly, you must be cheating. Which, first of all, I'm not 100% sure that's true. You could get somebody who's just like literally so close to GTO that even without RTA, they're able to get there. It's a bit dangerous. They used to ban people from athletics, not because they found any drugs in their system, but because they had abnormally high levels of testosterone, particularly females, and that was eventually proven to be not a very good way to catch people because some people have just very naturally high levels. I think the same thing could happen in poker, where some people are just naturally playing very close to GTO. And are we just going to say, well, you must be cheating then? The other thing is, like, if we know that that's the mechanism, then presumably somebody with RTA could just throw in the few random lines to throw them off the scent. So it's a very difficult area because, like I said, I mean, I do come back to the point that it kind of like it's important. They can't really talk about what they're doing to catch cheats too much, because if they do, then the cheats know what they have to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually had an interesting interaction with Star security team only a few months ago. I was actually in the process of writing a report on it. I had been approached by a person on Twitter who was pretending to be someone they weren't, and they were also pretending to be somebody on Skype. And I know you actually had an interaction with the same person, Dara, and I was sort of trying to build a little case away in the background to sort of maybe trap them at some point down the line. What I hoped was that they might reveal an account detail or something when they thought they really had me on the hook as someone who's going to send money. And they did that. They actually did make a mistake. And I immediately notified some people we know in PokerStars, because it was a PokerStars screen name that they gave me, a PokerStars identification. And I immediately passed it on. And they said, look, thank you very much for doing this. What we would say now is don't publish your piece, because we don't want it out there, because that would sort of ruin the element of surprise, or the element of the person not knowing they've been caught already, so that maybe they were trying to pick up more data or information on them. I'm guessing that was part of the process. But they also said to me, thank you for this, hand it all over, send us the email, and we'll say thank you very much for sending this, and you will never hear from us again. You won't know how it went. You won't know how anything went through. And I have no information, and they are locked tight on that. All the different people we know and all the different sites. This is one area where you just won't get any information from anybody. They keep those things really close to their chests, and they obviously, for very important reasons, don't want to reveal anything, particularly when they might have a cheater on the hook, and they might be able to link that person to other accounts. They might be able to link that person to bank accounts. They might be able to link that person to other players. So, that's sort of part of parcel of what they're all trying. Barry, any thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'm sort of reminded of is that I don't know if you've ever read the Freakonomics books.
I have.
Yeah, they did the opposite thing once, where they put out some disinformation to catch some cheaters. They the first of the Freakonomics books, they had a chapter called "Why Suicide Bombers Don't Take Out Life Insurance," and obviously, like, they probably don't believe it or whatever. But and then people sort of slammed them.
Light, Barry, keep it light. Entertaining.
No, well, and then some people were very critical of that, saying, well, you shouldn't have put that out. But then it turned out that some people on like a CIA suspect list or something all started taking out life insurance as a result, and they were able to narrow down on who the actual potential suicide bombers were. So in a way, what you could do is, if you were stars in that example, you could have put out something, like, oh yeah, anyone with a blue avatar or something we know is a cheater for something or other, and then people changed to a green avatar. I'm out of my depth for this example, as you can tell, but Jason Koon, nice guy.
Well, look, I'll give John Scanlon the last word and end it on it, because I do agree with you. A really nice guy, and wherever he was to go, it'd be very hard. Even if you had some issues with the site, it'd be very hard to have issues with the man. John Scanlon, Director of Sponsorships and Live Events over at GG, said, "We view ambassadors as part of our overall team. Having a player of his caliber providing advice and direction and representing the most committed segment of our player community is invaluable to us, and I'm sure he will be invaluable to them because he is a fantastic guy. He'll bring them both final table appearances where he'll be nicely patched up, and hopefully he'll do the stuff behind the scenes because that's good for poker in general. Well, at this point, I normally do a sort of a roundup. I'm thinking I might do my roundup. There's nothing else.
Yeah, hang on. There's one thing I want to discuss first of all.
Okay.
So this week in Gamble Online, you published the second of your blog trilogy about good poker etiquette.
Fantastic.
I found the piece quite surprising. I mean, it's typical Lappin. They ask you to write about good etiquette, and you actually wrote about the times that your etiquette was bad. You want to explain yourself?
Well, yeah, I suppose I can explain myself. So, obviously, we've been doing a little bit of writing for these guys at Gamble Online. It's been great fun to do it. We've also had a few segments on the chip race with them as well. Paul Seaton is their main poker writer, and he's a great guy when it comes to both quality of writing and really churning out a lot of good poker content of a good quality, getting interviews of a high end himself. And we were happy to sort of play a small role in that over the last few months. And one of the things was them commissioning us both to write a few articles. I know you've written one. We talked about it on the last show. And yeah, they asked me to write on etiquette. And then I just had this idea of immediately just thought of 3 times where my etiquette was, shall we say, questionable, less than ambassadorial. And but before I was an ambassador,
I think you're skipping a step here. I think you probably spent about 4 hours trying to think of a time you had behaved well at the table, and so you just dipped into the other pot, into the other pot.
Well, I know. Okay, so you asked me about it. So the first one was actually a repeat of a story I told on the Hendon Mob first flag show with Roland, where I talked about where I accidentally shot an angle back when I was a real newbie in 2007, when I stumbled into a little known tournament festival called the Dutch Masters on my holidays, where just walked in off the street, jumped in a 200 quid event, thought, oh, this would be good. I was going to play 200 quid cash. I'll jump in the 200 euro. Didn't realize it was a rebuy with fucking rebuys being flown in like mad. Anyway, long story short,
it's too late for that.
I did throw a little bit of an angle in that one, and I told that story, and that's the first one. But the second one was actually a time we were in the Isle of Man. Dara, you'll remember it. You remember me running giddily over to you and Dara Davey at the break to tell you what a genius I was, how I done the most evil genius slow roll of all time.
Yeah, I do remember. I remember wincing at the time too. At the because you basically took a risk. You assumed the dealer was going to do something, and while they probably were going to do something, there was a non-zero chance that they weren't, and you were going to lose a significant amount of equity. And you were boasting about this to the 2 of the people you'd swapped with in the tournament.
Well, in my defense, I don't want to spoil it. I want you to go read it. Go Gamble Online blog, guest author David Lappin, thing on Slowrolls. And please read it, and I hope you enjoy it because I think it is a funny story. But what I will say in my defense is, and Dara's right at the end of it, it involves me mucking my hand in a situation where I knew when you call on the river, you couldn't muck your hand. It was a PokerStars rule at the time. And we had a very vigilant dealer who had already enforced that rule moments earlier at the table. So I was very confident they were going to do it again. But I did. So I mucked my hand, and knowing that they would eventually flip it over. And I did have the winner. But I didn't throw them very close to the dealer. I mucked them at least halfway between us. So if they did go to muck them, I would have thrown myself. It would have ruined the spectacle. It would have ruined the moment. It wouldn't have had the poetry to it. But I would have, because I was swapping with you and Davey, you both had your 10 ball. I would have dived on those cards, revealed my quads, and pulled in my big pot.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it was going to be entertaining. If they did actually muck your card, we would never have heard the end of it either. I've heard this story several hundred times now because you trot it out every time you see me, pretty much. But every time it does make me wince. But I would say to people, if you read the story and you have a very, very bad impression of David, it was a very different Lappin back then. He was vainglorious, obnoxious, arrogant, determined to prove to everybody how smart he was, how much smarter he was than everybody else. As opposed to the slightly less all of those things version of Lappin that he is now. Yeah,
I'll go with that. I'll take that review.
It's a double risk though, surely, because in some card rooms that would have been considered collusion, wouldn't it? Or chip dumping. You fold in the nuts and the is that spoiler in the hand? No, but yeah. That's collusion in some cases.
That's another aspect.
I didn't
apparently tried to chip dump here.
No, I mean that's terrible. I haven't been slow rolled like that since yesterday when Dara was confirming that some books had arrived.
Tell us that story. That's really good. You guys were having fun on social media yesterday. And go on, another fucking book plug because we haven't.
No. Dara was having fun. I was not. I've been getting really stressed out about the Ireland Brexit book thing. Like really stressed out because Ireland are our biggest. They're not our biggest market, but they're our most enthusiastic market. We're very, very appreciative of the Irish customers. They're the engine that gets the book sales going for us. So I've been getting really stressed out about it, and it's been a ball ache to even get some books over to Dara in the first place for this book signing. And I'll let Dara take it away.
Yeah, no. So I knew these books were on the way, and Barry was on it. Like Barry was like, they're on the boat now. Now they're on the van to the depot. Oh no, shit! Now they've been stopped in customs. What's going on? So Barry gets very, very stressed about this stuff. So the books did eventually arrive. So obviously, you know, me being me, I decided I'm going to try and wind him up about this because he'd imagined all sorts of horrible scenarios, like when they opened the box to see what was in it, that they just ruined all the copies, etc., etc. So I said, okay, Barry, there's good news and there's bad news. But before I could tell him what the thing was, we had to go off and interview somebody for the chip race. So I left him stewing for an hour, came back to a stop fucking around, what's going on message. And then I started to answer, and then we had to interview somebody else. So I disappeared off again. And yeah, Barry kind of lost his mind in the meantime. He imagined all these scenarios. Actually, some of them were quite funny. He imagined that, for example, I didn't believe in ICM anymore, and I was going to disavow the book.
Yep, literally, that came into my head. Yep.
Yeah, that there was a typo on the cover, that Dvorak wanted his quote removed from the book. Yep. That we were going to get sued over something. Maybe Mason didn't like something we said about ICM or something. Probably the funniest one was he imagined that maybe the guy in the customs depot had just taken a marker and written English cunt on every single book. And as soon as we put that out there, one Irish guy on Twitter came straight on and goes, "I have a marker."
Barry, what is it? This was terrible work, an abusive working relationship you have with this man.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like everyone knows Dara is a former world-class runner, and we know he's an elite level poker player, and we know he's an amazing teacher and writer. But I think I've brought out the absolute talent in him, which is workplace bullying.
Which to be honest, Dara, is kind of moving in on my turf here, because that's normally what I do at Unibet Opens.
Yeah, I mean, in your when you were moonlighting for Vegas Slots Online, when you interviewed us both, you said who would play you both in a film, and I just said basically the two guys from the film Whiplash. If you've ever seen that, the film about the music teacher that bullies his student physically and emotionally to the brink of ruin. It's a fantastic film, by the way, if you've seen it.
Right, Damien Chazelle's first movie, isn't it? It's great. J.K. Simmons.
Yeah,
he plays Dara.
Yeah, and I'm the plucky young talented drummer by process of elimination.
Who has like broken hands and accent. He's so frazzled by the end of it.
Well, I'm actually impressed because after the previous two books, I've sent Dara a message to the effect of, "It's out, we're authors, are you excited?" And the first thing he's replied the previous two times was, "When are you starting on the next one?" Like, not "well done" or "go us" or anything like that. So I'm impressed he hasn't done that yet, because there is another one on the go, because I'm a glutton for this shit. So
good man. So it'll next time we have this, it'll be 6-time award winning and 4-time award winning. No, not award winning. Sorry, best selling. Well, possibly award-winning when the old GPIs come around in January, guys. I swear, I don't think there's a decent book on the market these days. I think you guys are absolutely quids in to win this one. I think Maria Konnikova chuffed out some nonsense, and Michael Acevedo.
That was more than a year ago.
Oh yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there was no work from 2020 counts. I forgot that. Yeah, scrap all that. Yeah, God, lads. Yeah, that's perfect. You'll definitely win. Be rigged if you don't win now.
Yeah, well, we've had loads of fun, loads of luck in book Twitter polls and voting things in the past. As an in-joke for you.
Twitter polling is always a great way to decide.
Twitter polls very fair. It's an uncorruptible medium.
Yeah, I mean obviously the whole US election is still in doubt in many people's minds, but like Twitter polls, fine, they're legit.
Yeah, to answer your question, by the time the next one rolls around, we'll have a hookup in Belfast so we can get some fucking bucks over there really, and just drive them over the border.
Maybe there'll be United Ireland by the time the next book comes out, so it'll be fine.
All right, let's open that.
That's a good one to end on, isn't it?
Okay, quick roundup. There's a few last little loose ends here. We spoke last week about PokerPaint. And obviously the sort of scandal that was brewing slightly. It was like, how litigious are people going to get? You know, how much is this guy going to do the right thing and maybe interact with the photographers ahead of time, maybe share a bit of the spoils or whatever it's going to be. Obviously, we spoke about Cat Arnsby's excellent piece on this. Well, since then, 5 notable poker photographers, I should say, sent a cease and desist to Mr. Brett Butts. The 5 photographers, Eric Harkins, Drew Amato, Haley Holchester, Neil Stoddart, and our good pal Danny Waxwell, who I was actually talking to all the way through this kind of period, are represented in a letter drafted by attorney Andrea Weiss. The notice states that the photographers have an interest in your converting their photographers on your website. I understand that you do not wish to breach their copyrights, which was something he had sort of subsequently said, but your continuing use of their photos constitutes such a breach. The notice continues, in order that you discontinue this behavior, if you do not cease and desist use of these photos immediately, or alternatively negotiate a licensing arrangement with each photographer, my clients will be forced to file a class action lawsuit against you. Since you have profited from this improper activity for some time now, you could be subject to substantial damages. A 6th photographer, quite a famous one, Joe Giron, is handling his interest regarding the PokerPaint situation separately from that group, but imagine if it turned into a class action thing, he might be well on top of that as well. Butts, in response, has received the notice and retained some counsel on the matter. I guess we just kind of wait and see for that one. Final bit of news, Robbie Straczynski, our good pal, completed the end of his card player lifestyle mixed game festival. That was that 4-day hybrid festival, which culminated in a $200 horse event. He ended up getting 124 runners for the horse event with a platinum pass added, which, by the way, pretty much doubled or maybe even more than doubled the prize pool. The event was ultimately won by, and this is great for Robbie because it gives him a big name on the tin now as well, former WSOP main event champion, Fossilman Greg Raymer. He took it down there in the wee hours of last night as well. So it was a big day for poker, lots of big results, lots of big names, taking down some stuff. Very happy for Robbie. Obviously, he put an awful lot of work into that. It might mean it will come back. We wish him the best. It remains for me to say, Dara O'Kearney, thank you so much for another excellent appearance on the Lock-In.
Thank you, David. And just one thing I want to ask before you go. Hunter's like 4 now, right?
4.5.
4.5, yeah. Maybe get him to read those bits in the future because you did such a horrendous performance of reading those. Reading that.
I got a bit tongue twisted, Dara. I did.
It's a brilliant way to end a podcast. Reading a cease and desist letter.
I know, yeah.
Barry Carter, thank you very much. You were great as always. We might even have you back for a 3rd time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a million, guys.
Bop, bop.
Bop, bop.